He was but a mere mortal, yet he stood alone against the world-destroying demon god. No matter how he was battered and broken, his will remained unyielding, refusing to bow. Just as he stood at death's door, the demon god suddenly decided that he did not want his toy to perish so easily. He sought to crush the will of this strongest human along with his body. Thus he issued an invitation, "Become my battle puppet, and I shall mend your wounds instantly." But the man saw right through the demon god's scheme. He knew the fiend only wanted to see him grovel and beg for mercy. Playing along, the man reached out and grasped the demon god's hand. He thought of how the world had already fallen into ruin. His kin, his friends, and his beloved were all gone. He could finally go and join them. At the cost of self-detonation, he hoped to at least heavily wound the demon god. Yet, the blast only managed to destroy one of the demon god's hands. The demon god Tartarus was instantly consumed by rage. He had actually been played by a mere toy. Looking down at the man's charred remains, he delivered a crushing blow with his fist. But even that could not quench the fires of his fury. Thus, he stormed into the pantheon, willing to pay any price just to have the man return to life. When the man finally woke again, all his fatal wounds had completely vanished. He looked up to find himself standing within a divine temple. With a sudden shimmer of light, an angel appeared before him. She said 3 prime gods had been watching him all along, because as humanity faced its ultimate demise, he alone had fought tooth and nail until the very end. The strength he displayed convinced the gods that he was a show worth watching. Therefore, they decided to grant him a second chance to rewrite the ending, while allowing him to retain all memories of his past life. Hearing this, the man was consumed by a burning rage. He threw a heavy punch straight at the angel's face. He roared, "We fought to the death just to survive, and to you lot it was nothing more than fun and games. A show is the existence of all mankind, just a tool for your twisted amusement." The angel then cast a spell, summoning a giant, to pin the man down beneath its foot. She said, "The gods find you amusing, which is why you have been given a second life. If you have the strength, then go ahead and save humanity. Furthermore, the demon god Tartarus has gone as far as sealing himself just to hunt you down. He has already annihilated 10 worlds, and had never once sustained an injury. But you, in a mere human body, actually wounded him. You have dealt a massive insult to his pride. He wants a rematch with you, to reclaim his undefeated record." The man thought, "If he wants to lose that badly, I will be happy to oblige." The angel then activated a magic circle, and informed him that the other gods had prepared a gift for him. Once reborn, he could access it by shouting, "Open perk." The man also made a silent vow to use this chance to pay the entire god race back in kind. As the array activated, the man was teleported back to the past. When he woke again, he had returned to 10 years prior. At this time, he was still serving as a slave to the god race. Many details from 10 years ago had become a bit blurry in his mind. Once everyone had left, he whispered, "Open perk." Immediately, a golden light enveloped him. Information flooded into his mind in an instant. What appeared before his eyes were high-level skills and equipment he had never seen before, though he could only clearly see the first few for now. The very first skill was Iron Wall. It could drastically increase his defense. He could completely ignore anyone with lower defense than his own, and possess the stamina of a heavy drinker. So, the first order of business was to earn enough money to buy his freedom, because with this slave mark he could not act freely. If he ventured outside his permitted range without leave, his heart would instantly stop beating. Under the buff of the Iron Wall skill, he seems like he never gets tired. The amount of ore he mines alone in a single day is more than an entire squad combined. Even though his team consists of the old, the weak, and the women, they still firmly hold the top rank. As a result, the rewards allocated to them are quite substantial. After a period of adjustment, he successfully unlocked a Tier 2 skill. It can boost all hidden effects by up to 500%. Now, he needs to consume a large amount of recovery potions to level up, but a single bottle costs 4 gold coins. With a daily wage of only 1.5 gold, progress is clearly too slow. Time for a loan then. Ha! But there is a credit limit. It is still not enough to satisfy his needs. Just as he was looking troubled, a sales manager from the temple appeared. He told Zephyr he could take a loan using his body as collateral. He immediately signed the contract. But the gold from mining is so measly he can't pay it back. So he went to report to the mining foreman. He claimed to have heard the cries of monsters deep within the mine. He offered to lead a hunting team to the monster's exact location. In this world, monsters are born from mana vortexes. While it is dangerous, the mana stones inside them can be exchanged for a lot of gold. Moreover, monster hides and bones can be used to craft equipment. So he decided to head into the dungeon to earn gold. Once everything was ready, the hunting team arrived right on time. They prepared to set out immediately. At that moment, Zephyr noticed he only recognized one person among the 3. This meant only one thing. The other 2 were destined to perish in this mission. He began formulating a plan in his mind. Processing. Understood. La. Small. Dale. H. Fox. L. Possesses enduring physical strength. A. Silver key. The key holder can access items at any time. Store. Store items in the silver vault or from within. Store items in the silver vault or retrieve them. Action. Quality. Am I. The sound. What is going on? Dragon heartgrass. A natural body strengthening tonic. A natural tonic that also has soul soothing and spirit stabilizing effects. Effective. Perk 2. Skill, less than Hermes' secret greater than. Takes all faint effects and maximizes them. Maximization, achieve. Effect increase rate, 500%. M. Opening. A. Ha. L. $1,313,767.51. In progress. He came here this week. I am his team leader. I am his team leader, so if there is anything needed. Stamina testing. Stamina testing, mana soil detection. Mana detection. In short, a believer of the demon god, Tartarus. O. A. C. Start. Day 0. Day. G. Status. Day. Fatigue and injuries are converted into debt, and the moment the caster's mana hits 0, it is all returned to the caster at once. To challenge higher difficulty dungeons, countless adventurers have used this specific skill, only to eventually face total bankruptcy, also known as death. Measurement complete. Inside. Do you even have any? But in the shop. Oh. Oh. The broker White Rose acts as the bridge between us and the underworld, trading monster carcasses, equipment, and idle goods with customers. X's. Causing a scene in the infirmary. Man. Course. Quality. Just to turn into Spider-Man. Too bad he is already built like a brick wall. Ordinary spiders can't do a damn thing to him. Followed immediately by a massive hammer swing, KO. He crushes the spider's head while taunting them to bring more. The blondie nearby has never seen such a flex. He is so scared he falls flat on his butt. With one command from Zephyr, everyone moves. Responding to the call, they form a cross formation, ready to go 300 rounds with the spider swarm. The reason their weapons are wrapped in cloth Hey, it is because Zephyr ordered them to do so. These spider silks are notoriously hard to cut. Swinging a normal weapon is like hitting cotton candy. But with the cloth wrap, it is a whole different game. The hammer form cannon is responsible for clearing webs. Master Gort is in charge of making cotton candy, while that guy Ned is just playing whack-a-mole. The mortals coordinate with clear division of labor. Yet a few law-breaking spiders still slip through the cracks, relying on their quick steps to pull off a sneak attack. But they do not need to worry about that. Just one shout and it is over. Zephyr, standing behind, has been charging up for ages. One intentional impact punch secures the pinnacle. After the grand battle, the spiders on the perimeter are basically cleared out. The team is huffing and puffing like they have aged 10 years in a minute. But no one expected Ned's condition to be even worse, because his artery was nicked by a spider leg earlier. He could not help but feel a sense of doubt inside. Why am I the one dragging everyone down? That is when the life mentor, Zephyr, steps in. Handing over a potion, he comforts him. A mistake is no big deal. Just do not make it a habit. After saying that, he turns and leaves, because Zephyr knows, rather than lecturing him with words, it is better to let him experience it firsthand. Even though the blondie still seems defiant toward Zephyr. After this fight, he has found his own answer. The group then continued their dungeon raid. And Blondie, like a bride on her wedding night, got his first real lesson. He humbly accepts it and builds chemistry with the team. Right after the hammerform cannon lands a crowd control hit, a thrusting strike captures the perfect timing. Following Zephyr's guidance, he stabs right into the spider's belly, grips his longsword tight and slices with all his might. A powerful swing successfully slashes the giant spider. As the spider collapses, the team immediately showers him with praise, while Blondie is reveling in his own smugness. Zephyr appears above them and speaks. Not a bad performance for your first time. Keep up that momentum. But looking at Zephyr, sitting atop the mountain of spider corpses, they can't help but feel a complex mix of emotions. It is like a mortal witnessing a god, absolute awe and veneration. The hammer wielder, Marco, finally can't contain his curiosity. He asks Zephyr what he used to do for a living, whether he belonged to some large-scale guild, or if he was someone's secret elite operative. Blondie remains silent, but he is just as curious about everything regarding this man. Zephyr claims he was just a simple neighborhood security guard, clocking in every day at 6 a.m., providing safety for the residents, maintaining the peace of the neighborhood. However, as for who his master was, he had just performed a tubal ligation on the spider with his bare hands. What is even more bone-chilling is that the entire surgery took less than 3 seconds. As for why he did it, it was simply to prevent it from laying eggs during the fight. Just moments ago, Zephyr, wielding a pair of spider-leg nunchucks, engaged the Spider Queen in an epic battle, and under the coordinated assault of his subordinates, they successfully dealt her a heavy blow. Seeing Zephyr looking so relaxed and nonchalant, the Spider Queen is so enraged she is practically weeping. Not only were her children burned to death by his flames, but he is now using their severed limbs to fight her. Thinking of this, the Spider Queen lets out a furious screech. She immediately begins a frenzied offensive, the shockwaves from her legs slamming the earth are enough to send the nearby lackeys flying. The next second, she unexpectedly speaks in human tongue. Mere humans dare to treat my children like this. Only your blood can quench my eternal hatred. Twisting her massive body, she opens her abdomen, ready to unleash a flood of venom. But right at that moment, a small blade suddenly lunges forward. It pierces straight into her body, firmly grabbing the venom glands in her neck. With a low growl, he rips them out with brute force. And then, we see the scene from the beginning. Zephyr undoes his belt, and with a few quick raps, completes the ligation surgery. Then he leaps onto a spider leg, vaulting high into the air, looking down at the constipated Spider Queen without a shred of hesitation. He ends her life with a devastating downward kick. Watching the Spider Queen lose all signs of life, the trio dances with joy at their victory. Yet Zephyr's face remains as calm as still water. He just stands there quietly, because the Spider Queen's presence here left traces. He could not simply devour the essence like he did with the previous predator. Just then a voice calls out to his ear, "Big bro." Turning around, he sees Blondie has already laid out a carpet. "Please, you have worked hard, big bro. Leave the dirty and exhausting work to us underlings." Zephyr does not stand on ceremony. He immediately sits down to enjoy the refreshing ale. Looking at the 3 people before him, it is exactly as he predicted. They are all rare and exceptional talents. But on second thought, they are only suited for this level of hunting. If they ever cross paths with that man, they will be completely powerless to resist. Currently, whether it is equipment, manpower, or raw stat values. Nothing is sufficient yet. He needs to come up with a countermeasure fast. A few days pass by quickly. Inside the cathedral of the temple, White Rose is busy trading with other adventurers. Zephyr watches everything quietly from the side. He can't help but sigh at how much the world has changed. These underground dealings have become so blatant and daring. After the transaction was completed, Zephyr and White Rose took a walk together, looking at the powerful, handsome, and wealthy man before her. White Rose could not help but feel a flicker of compassion, but Zephyr saw right through her thoughts. He brought up the matter of his debt directly. White Rose had no choice but to start reciting the accounts. You have currently reached 4% of your target amount. After deducting the 2% used for repayment, you still need to pay a kidney or two to settle the final transaction. She then handed Zephyr a Research Institute uniform and an entry pass. Regarding the alchemy tools Zephyr mentioned in his previous list, the equipment was far too massive, so there was no way to rent it out to him directly. However, using the laboratory cleaning job as a cover, he could come and go as he pleased, but he had to wait until after 7 p.m. when the staff clocked out. Zephyr readily accepted, and just like that, the equipment issue was sorted. Then a moment of chemistry sparked between him and White Rose, but right then a voice called out from behind. So, this is where you have been hiding. Zephyr was startled. When did this person even show up? He insisted these were just nunchucks. The surrounding small fry were too terrified to make a sound. They could only grumble inwardly. Why do not you just call it a happy blade while you are at it? After Zephyr gave the team a few simple tasks, he walked with a swagger into the depths of the lair. After exactly 7 times 7, 49 steps, he stopped. Looking into the bottomless cavern, he knew he had reached the very core. It was the Spider Queen's birthing chamber. Besides the queen, who was busy with her family planning, there was a massive legion of spider knights standing guard. Even though they spotted the intruder, they could only hiss and bare their fangs from a distance. Because their sole duty was to protect the queen, they would not easily abandon their posts. Zephyr understood this perfectly. That is why he did not just barge in recklessly. But since he was already here, he was not about to leave empty-handed. He immediately activated the silver key. He pulled out several sacks filled with flour. Then, with a 720-degree spin, he hurled the special delivery all at once into the cave. Sensing a threat, the spider guard struck decisively. A massive cloud of dust rapidly diffused into every corner. For a moment, the spiders seemed to go into a frenzy. Zephyr used the cover to draw his weapon. He raised his crossbow, aiming at his target. With a whistle, the bolt tore through the air. It struck the hard armor of a spider guard dead on. Although it dealt no significant damage, the friction created a single spark. But that tiny spark was all it took. It triggered a massive dust explosion. In a chain reaction, the flying sparks instantly ignited, the flour permeating the air. Zephyr quickly evacuated the scene, but he knew that this alone was not enough to finish them off. The spiders soon swarmed out in pursuit, but Zephyr had more than one trick up his sleeve. He fired poison arrows while retreating, doing his best to delay the chasing horde. However, one particularly fast spider caught up quickly. Zephyr pulled a drifting turn and nearly vanished. It followed closely, refusing to back down. But what awaited it was a spider web trap, and this was the task Zephyr had given his team. Using the black iron spider silk sacks they gathered earlier, they had blocked the path at the designated location. Zephyr used his lean build to slide right through, but the bulky spider could only get tangled and stuck. Zephyr stood up and drew a spider leg blade. With a swift Iojutsu strike, he ended the life of the last spider guard. As he sheathed his blade, he suddenly sensed something. The Spider Queen, finally unable to endure the searing heat, charged out, trampling over the corpses of her guards. Zephyr continued to sprint toward the cave entrance. The Spider Queen followed closely behind him, with unstoppable momentum. She was on the verge of catching up. She immediately spat out venom, intending to melt Zephyr away. At that critical hair-breadth moment, Zephyr successfully leapt out of the cave, narrowly dodging the venom. But it was not over yet. The Spider Queen followed, violently smashing through the cave entrance. Her massive body loomed so large it blotted out the sun. Even the sky seemed to dim a few shades. She then slammed onto the ground with a thunderous force. The earth shattered as she let out a frantic, piercing screech. At that moment, Zephyr issued an order. Her terrifying appearance was enough to make anyone's blood run cold. Zephyr immediately signaled the Bronze Squad waiting outside. Everyone, get to your positions. The Bronze Squad instantly entered combat mode. Zephyr was the first to charge, leading the vanguard. 2 spider mandibles flashed with a sharp shing, striking across the Spider Queen's back. This forced a strange cry of agony from the Spider Queen. As Zephyr landed several more slashes in quick succession, the Spider Queen was driven into a total frenzy. Zephyr had successfully become the Queen's primary target. it. According to the plan, it was almost time for the Bronze Squad to make their move. However, at this moment, the Bronze Squad's thoughts were racing. Can we really defeat that monster? The atmosphere was thick with tension. It was so quiet they could hear their own racing heartbeats. In truth, although they were also hunters, and part of a hunting squad, their status was quite different. They were often looked down upon by others in the trade, because they were merely responsible for scouting terrain for the real fighters. They were treated like errand boys and constantly mocked by other teams. Yes, they were always the laughingstock of the other squads. They were only used for menial tasks, like serving tea or carrying water. Treated as nothing more than low-level assistants. They had absolutely no dignity left. The blonde leader of the squad gritted his teeth. How much longer are we going to be treated like trash? We have already come this far. We can take him down. As soon as those words were spoken, their morale surged instantly. That is right. This time they had a reason not to back down. Since someone had finally restored their dignity, they had to seize this chance with both hands. With that resolve in mind, the Bronze Squad immediately jumped into the fray. Charge! Take that, ha! Although the funds were still far short of what was needed for the purchase list. Once White Rose realized Zephyr's true value, she did her best to prepare the items he required. Before long, the sister handed Zephyr a set of work clothes. Since the alchemy equipment Zephyr needed was too vital, she could not just rent it out to him directly. However, White Rose instead applied for a janitorial position for him there. After his shift ended at 7, Zephyr could use the facilities as he pleased. Zephyr agreed that this was a much safer way to handle things. Yet, while the two were talking, a voice came from behind them. Zephyr turned his head to look. It turned out to be Sahak's superior. He had come to invite the sister. Looking at this familiar face before him, Zephyr felt a sense of satisfaction. The prey he had worked so hard to lure was finally taking the bait. This man was none other than Ned, the Inquisitor Executor. Among the only 12 existing Rank 1 executors, he held a prestigious seat. He was a presence recognized even by the Pantheon itself. Seeing the man before her, White Rose immediately began the usual, professional flattery. But White Rose was no ordinary woman. She knew that Ned's arrival was not as simple as just wanting a chat. He definitely had an ulterior motive. The target he is really looking for is Zephyr. These bastards really know how to hold a grudge. Sure enough, it did not take long. This man also sent an invitation to Zephyr. He spoke to Zephyr with double meanings in his words. Don't you and my subordinate Sahak share a bit of destiny? A destiny indeed. At that time, his subordinate was beaten so badly by Zephyr that even his own mother would not recognize him. Zephyr arrogantly replied, Sahak, who is that again? Sorry, I have got a bit of a bad memory. Though it looked like a simple conversation, the intense pressure clashing between the two was anything but casual small talk. The sister standing nearby was almost scared out of her wits. The terrifying magical power they emitted made her whole body tremble. After sensing this surge of power, the sister corrected her previous judgment. This guy's strength is on par with a temple knight, perhaps even stronger. Ned, after seeing Zephyr's prowess, also took a keen interest in him. He had only intended to test him out, but his bloodlust for battle drove him to make a move. In an instant, both assumed their combat stances. A fight was about to break out at any second. Just then, the sister suddenly let out a loud shout. Both of you, get on your knees. In a flash, the two powerful beings went thud, and both fell to their knees on the ground. It turns out this is the effect of the slave brand, a compulsory command from the Temple of Light. It is an absolute order that can be issued to anyone bearing that tattoo. A compulsory order for those with the crest. It is an experimental absolute command for those marked. Issue compulsory command. It is an absolute order that can be issued to anyone bearing that tattoo. The index of the compulsory command for those with the tattoo. An absolute command can be given to anyone bearing the mark. The sister used this to end the farce. Then she raised her hand and slapped Zephyr right across the face. She grabbed Zephyr by the collar and dragged him away. After a few steps, she stopped and called out to Ned, "This guy is my toy. If you try to move in on him, do not blame me for being ruthless." The scene shifts. The sister brought Zephyr into a small alleyway. She began to lecture him loudly. If things go wrong, she started scolding him. She told Zephyr not to do such dangerous things anymore. That guy is a heretic, a level 1 inquisitor among the judges. To reach his position, he must be incredibly powerful. But almost no one knows his fighting style, because most who have seen it are dead. As she spoke, she touched Zephyr's injured left cheek. With a concerned look, she said, "Please be more careful. Once outside the temple, I won't be able to protect you anymore. But the stubborn Zephyr simply brushed her hand away. Where are you going? Since that guy has already shown himself. Since that guy has already shown his face. Then it seems I need to pick up the pace. Meanwhile, Ned was dusting off his knees. This brand made him extremely displeased. However, as an apostle of the demon god, without this brand, how could he have infiltrated this temple? Spider Queen's venom and various lethal toxins were mixed together. He then took out fine needles and dipped them into the venom. Without hesitation, he stabbed them into his shoulder. That is right, this was how humans increased their strength. In the previous life, after their abilities were stripped by the gods, by relying on the fusion of two deadly toxins, one could use poison to fight poison and enhance their power. Soon, Zephyr's body was covered in poison needles. The intense agony caused him immense pain. Guessed, this intense pain left him suffering. The intense agony caused him immense pain. The sister nearby was just about to step forward to check on him, but Zephyr stepped in and put a stop to it. It turns out, Zephyr had already given him a heads up earlier. No matter what happens in a moment, do not lose your cool. He is doing this solely to level up. Before long, the veins across Zephyr's entire body turned a vivid emerald green. His bloodshot eyes and the crimson trailing from the corner of his mouth were clear signs of the immense agony he was enduring. However, he had a trick up his sleeve for this exact situation. Zephyr sat down cross-legged. This is the microcosmic orbit, an ancient Eastern mana cultivation technique. As Zephyr circulated his internal energy, those bulging green veins on his skin gradually began to fade back to their original color. Now, only one final step remained. The sister had to drive the poison needle into the crown of his head. But White Rose was currently a bundle of nerves. Can I really pull this off? Meanwhile, on the other side of the battlefield, a group of hunters was being relentlessly pursued by a swarm of avian monsters. They were being hunted like prey, even though they had fired a flare. Our team fired the signal flare. Reinforcements were nowhere to be found. As the flying monsters closed in, the stench of death grew thick in the air. Just when all hope seemed lost at this critical juncture, a thunderous roar split the sky. That man has arrived. Having just leveled up, Zephyr was on a whole different playing field. He could snap the throats of those giant birds with zero effort. With a casual strike, he could one-shot countless monsters. Watching from the sidelines, the hunters were absolutely shell-shocked by the scene. Is this guy even human? But when he caught sight of Zephyr's slave brand, he realized that the temple's reinforcements had finally arrived. After cleaning up the giant birds, Zephyr questioned the hunter behind him. Where is the boss? The hunter instinctively pointed in a direction. In the blink of an eye, Zephyr vanished without a trace. After Zephyr left, the hunter who had answered was suddenly overcome with panic. The truth was, within this dungeon, 4 out of their 7 team members had already been slaughtered. And out of the 3 who tried to escape, he was the only one who made it back alive. The sight he witnessed in the next second would likely be etched into his memory forever. A flash as bright as a nuclear blast illuminated the entire night sky. Countless slashes cut through the air. The boss monster was instantly decapitated. With the boss down, Zephyr brushed the dust off his hands. He fired a green flare, signaling that the situation was handled. Emergency resolve. The green signal was deployed to confirm the mission's success. He sent up the green signal to mark the completion of the task. Zephyr soon took a look at himself. His newly strengthened body felt different. He was quite satisfied with the surging power flowing through him. Everything Zephyr had just done was being closely watched by 2 big shots back at the temple. Beings who had reached their level quickly saw through Zephyr's true intentions. He wanted to join their upcoming major raid, one of the world's 8 greatest challenges, the Princess's Grave. The bronze team had just finished warming up and was heading back to the dormitory, only to find White Rose walking out of their room. The guys, who were just relaxing, immediately bowed in respect when they saw the sister. She politely acknowledged the rascals in return. Don't forget to pay back the interest on time. But the trio was currently burning with curiosity. That demon sister. Why on earth was she coming out of our room? But when they saw Zephyr inside the room, all their questions were answered in an instant. It was pretty obvious what had gone down without anyone saying a word. And when they noticed the ring on Zephyr's finger, they were so shocked they started stuttering. Is that the legendary token of love? Unfortunately for them, it was not the spicy drama the audience was hoping for. This ring is known as the Ring of Purification. It helps the wearer circulate mana, thereby boosting their magical defense. Furthermore, it can be used once per day to dispel Valar, and it can also be used once every day to remove the Valar seal. A skill that dispels curses. A skill to dispel curses. Remember this ring. It will be of great use later. As for why White Rose gave it to him, it is because last time she saw Zephyr using poison to buff his own attributes. She misunderstood Zephyr for being a pro with deadly toxins from some underground assassination organization. In reality, Zephyr learned that trick from them in his past life. That is why the sister wants to ride his coattails so badly. Right now, the sister is walking outside with a tense look on her face. She is absolutely convinced of her own theory. She even imagined what Zephyr would look like, wearing the uniform of an assassination guild. She is so hyped that she is practically skipping as she walks. Zephyr, having just stepped out, sees the sister acting like this. He is honestly speechless, but maybe it is for the best. If the sister spreads this rumor, then that fellow will finally take notice of me. Meanwhile, while the group is fooling around in the room, suddenly a sharp whistle rings out. Blondie opens the door to check. A dagger is pinning a piece of paper to the door. It is an emergency order, ordering the Bronze Squad to a specific coordinate. Wait, this looks exactly like the Hunter Captain's handwriting. Zephyr takes it to have a look. He instantly figures out what is going on. Though it mimics the captain's handwriting, the content was definitely written by Ned. I did not expect that guy to lose his patience so quickly. Well then, I will have to go and meet him. Soon, Zephyr arrives alone at the location marked on the paper. He is quite curious about Ned's current strength. However, the person greeting his eyes is not Ned. It is Sahak, the guy he thrashed last time. Zephyr simply says indifferently, "I am busy right now." Single quote, "I do not have time to play games with you." But Sahak seems very confident in his current power. Yet in the next second, Zephyr targets his neck and delivers a brutal strike. With a heavy thud, Sahak collapses to the ground. Just as Zephyr is wondering if Ned has some other trick up his sleeve, Sahak slowly stands up behind him. He looks absolutely terrifying now. He is clutching a strange-looking flute. Suddenly, a grotesque monster slowly lifts Sahak up. He has been plotting for a long time for this very day. He even sacrificed an entire village, the lives of 50 innocent villagers. Seeing this scene, even Zephyr has to take it seriously. How can it be in his past life he had encountered this thing before? Yes, he definitely faced this creature in his previous life. This is a truly terrifying existence. Sahak picks up the eerie flute and gives it a soft blow. In the next instant, a horrifying giant hand hoists him up. Witnessing this spectacle, Zephyr's eyes widen in surprise. Who knew you were a zone-type ability user too? Before Zephyr can even react, Sahak commands that strange entity to smash down violently towards Zephyr. In an instant, the ground is pulverized into rubble. However, Zephyr emerges from the dust completely unscathed. Even though this Executor's power is quite formidable now, if he wants to stand on equal footing with Zephyr, he will have to wait for 3 lifetimes. It turns out the thing Sahak is controlling is a biological weapon of the demon god's apostles. Its name is Shoggoth. This creature evolves by constantly devouring life force. It is an incredibly malevolent existence, but its most terrifying aspect is not its raw power. It is its mental corruption. Just a single touch is enough to instill pure dread. Any contact will fill a person with overwhelming fear and plague them with hallucinations. Once the degree of mental corruption reaches 100%, it would drive anyone into a state of total madness. And at this moment, Zephyr was already ensnared by Shoggoth's countless tentacles. Physical attacks were completely useless against a biological horror like this. As Shoggoth tightened its grip more and more, Zephyr's eyes turned a deep blood red. It was clear that Zephyr was on the brink of losing his mind. But just then, Zephyr whispered 4 words, "Dispel curse." In the next second, Zephyr's entire body was bathed in a pure, flawless radiance. Every trace of Shoggoth vanished into thin air. So this was the power of the ring White Rose gave him. Zephyr had calculated this from the start, luring Shoggoth to latch onto him before activating the dispel. With the curse broken, the first thing Zephyr did was seize Sahak by the throat. Fury burned intensely in Zephyr's eyes. This so-called Inquisitor, this Executor, had used the demon god's artifacts just to satisfy his own selfish greed. He had even mercilessly slaughtered innocent lives in secret. If I am to save more people in this life, then scum like this absolutely cannot be allowed to exist. As Zephyr released his grip, his other hand surged with explosive power. Lightning, the symbol of pure strength, crackled around his fist. This piece of human trash would become the first person Zephyr has killed since his regression. Crack. Thud. After finishing the battle, Zephyr picked up a flute lying nearby. He played the harmonic tone to command Shoggoth's destruction. Soon, Shoggoth began to dissipate. However, this was far from over. The next moment, a red-haired man descended from the sky. It was Ned, the one who had officially invited the protagonist here. Seeing Ned, Zephyr felt a wave of relief. All the effort I spent baiting him was not in vain. This guy finally showed up. Moreover, the debt of gratitude I owed him from my past life can finally be repaid in this one. But my primary goal right now is to use a bit of deception to create an opportunity to get close to him. I must ensure everything goes perfectly. However, upon seeing Zephyr, Ned drew his dagger without saying a word. A terrifying battle aura shrouded his body. Through his observations of Zephyr thus far, he had reached a single conclusion. Zephyr had to be eliminated. With that thought in mind, Ned charged at Zephyr in an instant. Dozens of slashes streaked through the air in a single second. Even though he was certain of Zephyr's position, Ned suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of tension. Something felt wrong. Ned was deeply bewildered. His instincts told him something was off. This guy had actually dodged every single one of his attacks. What is more, Zephyr seized the moment Ned's momentum had not faded to launch a counterattack. Ned's gaze sharpened in shock. On this entire continent, hardly anyone could surpass his sword speed. Even his master was among the few who could. Meanwhile, Zephyr stood there, casually tossing a pebble in his hand. Do you really think it is fair to use a sword against someone who is completely unarmed? Hearing Zephyr's words, Ned dropped his dagger without hesitation. Such was the pride of the strong. Ned quickly fell into a strange combat stance. But what was even more peculiar was that Zephyr's stance was almost identical to his. It was as if Zephyr were his own shadow. As the two of them spent a moment adjusting, the tension rose. As they squared off, the two of them continued to calibrate their stances. In the next second, both were blasted back together. They exchanged several blows in an instant. Red and blue lightning crackled and roared across the battlefield. This was a true clash between top-tier powerhouses. The sheer terror of it was breathtaking. Soon, from Ned's response, Zephyr heard exactly what he wanted to hear. Who on earth are you? His master clearly only took 2 disciples. One was himself, and the other was the master's own son. So who was this guy using the exact same fighting style? Zephyr, with a calm expression, began his bluff. You did not seriously think master only had 2 disciples, did you? Or did he just not tell you anything at all? Have you ever heard of a shadow disciple? Zephyr first used his raw power to intimidate Ned, then proceeded to deceive him, claiming to be a shadow disciple recruited by Ned's master. A so-called shadow disciple was a replacement kept in case one of the main disciples died. Then Zephyr brought up a weapon from Ned's family that had been stolen long ago. The tears of blood. This string of information left Ned utterly shocked. How could he know that? Ned was shaken to his core by these revelations. This sequence of information left Ned speechless with shock, especially regarding the tears of blood. It was a treasure of his family snatched away by the temple, to seek revenge against the temple for the treasure they stole from his noble clan. This, to find the tears of blood, his family's treasure stolen by the temple. That was the treasure the temple had stripped from his family. The reason he worked so hard to become stronger was so that one day he could personally take it back from the temple. Zephyr claimed he knew the secret of its location, but he would not reveal it until Ned proved himself to be truly trustworthy. Zephyr quickly laid out his condition for Ned. He wanted Ned to pull some strings to get him into the hunting class. Facing Zephyr, who knew of his deep-seated blood feud, Ned had no choice but to trust him. Ned soon brought Zephyr to the hunting group. The leader was the 36th ranked among the demon god's followers, ranked 36th among the demonic leaders. It was none other than Glimmer, the 36th ranked cultist. Zephyr originally just wanted to confirm how many cultists were hiding in the hunting class to prepare a defense in this lifetime. What he did not expect, however, was that every single one of the 40 people in the class was a cultist. No wonder humanity was doomed to lose. The scene before him left Zephyr at a loss for a moment. The strength of these individuals represented the absolute pinnacle of human potential. They could have been humanity's greatest assets, yet they chose to worship the demon god instead. He had to eradicate these traitors for the sake of mankind. The scene shifts to the next day. Before the hunt ended, the scene moved to the 3rd day. To maintain secrecy, Zephyr successfully infiltrated. Zephyr had successfully made his way into the hunting roster for the princess's grave. The plan was proceeding exactly as he had envisioned. Meanwhile, Zephyr had also followed through on his word regarding the goblin nest files, as previously agreed, helping the bronze team clear 3 dungeons. The 3 members of the bronze team bowed to Zephyr in gratitude. Their appreciation was written all over their faces. Zephyr could see they were reluctant to see him go, but they were still not strong enough. Before leaving, Zephyr extended an olive branch to them. Come find me once you have leveled up and gotten stronger. I look forward to seeing the bronze team again in the future. Meanwhile, the equipment and weapons at the nun's place were ready, as another nun offered her prayers. With the prayers of the sisterhood, the equipment was imbued with divine blessings. The hooks of the black iron spider All equipment was blessed. Every piece of gear received the holy enhancement. After a period of training and preparation, the expedition to the princess's grave officially began. The difficulty of this dungeon was so extreme that it was ranked as one of the continent's top 10 calamities. Furthermore, this dungeon, the Knights of the Temple spent a full 10 years and still could not conquer this place. But this time, they are determined to win, because the lineup for this raid can only be described as terrifying. Almost all of the temple's strongest combat forces have been mobilized. Soon, the hunting party utilized wave tactics, quickly wiping out the countless undead soldiers outside. However, in the next second, a giant skeleton appeared ahead. This monster is known as a bone golem. It is composed of hundreds of skeleton soldiers. Its power is immense. With just one swing of its club, the shockwave alone sent dozens of people flying. Just a shockwave broke the lines and sent dozens flying. The shockwave alone was enough to blow dozens of them away. The nuns in the squad quickly channeled their mana to cast magic. Good. The golem is firmly restrained. Just as the golem was about to break free, the chains snapped, right as the monster was on the verge of escaping. Another middle-aged man raised the longsword in his hand. With a single downward strike from the man, the bone golem, which looked so imposing a moment ago, was instantly split in half. That single strike immediately earned him a mountain of flattery. Amazing, as expected of Lord Matthias. However, the crisis was far from over, because where there is a bone golem, there must be a lich skeleton controlling it. If the lich skeleton is not dealt with quickly, it will keep spawning bone golems endlessly. To stop this, they must first destroy the object serving the lich skeleton, the stone tablet providing it with mana. But with such a vast undead army in the way, getting close is easier said than done. At that moment the Holy Sun, clad in top-tier gear, made his move. With one thrust of his spear, a golden shockwave pierced through the entire battlefield. The lich skeleton and the stone tablet were shattered together. Boom. Crackle, clang, zap, smash. The one capable of such devastating power is none other than the artifact in the Holy Sun's hand, worth 2 million gold coins. The Spear of Radiance. The Spear of Radiance, haha, it is glorious. While the battle outside was reaching a fever pitch, why is Zephyr nowhere to be seen? It turns out, Zephyr is taking advantage of the hunter's distraction. Relying on memories from his past life, he quietly found a secret passage. With a subtle smirk from Zephyr, the real show is about to begin. Meanwhile, the leaders of the squad are discussing the strategy for raiding the 9th floor. But here, on the 8th floor which was supposedly cleared, right here on the already conquered 8th floor, a new crisis has emerged. Shoggoth, the biological weapon of the demon god's apostles, suddenly appeared. Arg, Shoggoth, that monstrosity of the demon god's apostles, has appeared. The apostles' biological weapon, Shoggoth, is here. Now, not only are the temple knights in disarray, but even the undercover demon god apostles are completely dumbfounded. Even the moles among them are staring in total shock. This thing is not supposed to be out yet. Which idiot let this thing loose? In that split second, with the intuition of the powerful, all the leaders turned their gaze toward one direction. There, they saw a young man who had zero presence until now. It is our protagonist, Zephyr. Zephyr was calmly and slowly pulling a mechanism. Click. The ground actually began to collapse. Suddenly it split into countless small blocks, rising slowly. The entire layout of the dungeon is actually changing. What on earth did this kid do? In fact, the most bewildered ones are those undercover demon god apostles. Everything was going according to plan, waiting until they could steal the dragon heart. Wipe out every single one of those temple bastards. Never thought I would run into a double agent, though. However, the Holy Son of the Temple is not all that worried, because he still holds the power to manipulate the slave brand. With a furious roar, the Holy Son commanded, "Freeze." But Zephyr did not show even the slightest reaction. It turns out that before this, to resist the effects of the slave brand, the priests had prepared a specialized potion out of necessity. The potion had long been ready. Who would have guessed it would kick in right at this critical moment? Matthias, the leader of the demon god's apostles, saw that all the groundwork he had laid had ended up serving someone else's interests entirely. Intense fury surged through his heart. The mana on his longsword swelled like a rising tide. But before he could even swing his blade, the second mole, Ned, burst onto the scene. The Holy Son of the Temple, unable to control Zephyr with the slave brand, was gnashing his teeth in pure rage. Meanwhile, the leader of the demon god's apostles was blindsided by Ned, the second undercover agent, amidst the chaos. Why exactly is Ned collaborating with Zephyr? As it happens, before this meeting, Zephyr had approached Ned for a private conversation and revealed everything to him. The truth that had been kept from him all along. The master who had raised him from a child, the one who helped him grow strong to seek his revenge, had been deceiving him the entire time. In reality, That man had long ago conspired with the person who killed Ned's father and stole his family's secret treasures. Ned went to confirm this for himself. Handed over to the cult leader, Ned personally went to verify the facts. Ned had seen the proof with his own eyes. The truth was laid bare before him, leaving him with no choice but to believe it. As these thoughts raced through his mind, his anger grew more volatile by the second. He vented all his fury onto a nearby magic statue. Although Zephyr could empathize with Ned's current state of mind, he still spoke up to give him a reality check. Now is not the time to let emotions cloud your judgment. They soon reached the stone gates of the final boss. As the stone gates began to descend, the two of them finally scrambled inside at the very last second. Ned was absolutely stunned. He could not believe Zephyr could enter the boss lair this way. Actually, this was all thanks to a special buff granted by the gods. It was the effect of a divine perk. Uses available. This was the result of a divine blessing. Already used once. A true gift from the heavens. This was the power of a divine attribute. Among them, the goddess of luck had bestowed great fortune. It could only be used 3 times in total, and Zephyr had just burned through one of those uses. Before the two of them could even catch their breath, a sudden surge of energy began to coalesce in front of them. The boss, the princess, manifested before their eyes. Meanwhile, on the other side of the scene, everything was falling apart. On the opposite side, total chaos ensued. The walls finally stopped shifting at that moment. But as the Holy Sun regained his composure, he noticed something highly unusual. The slave brand had suddenly failed moments ago. And then there was the inexplicable appearance of Shoggoth. Connecting the dots sent a chill down his spine. If his suspicions were correct, then there was at least a handful of demon god followers. No, there were countless demon god cultists, a massive number of demon god worshippers, who had infiltrated this hunt. They were hiding among them the whole time. But who exactly could it be? The Holy Sun quickly followed the breadcrumbs, and locked his suspicions onto Matthias. As for Matthias, at this very moment, he was absolutely livid because of those two traitors. He was seething with rage, teeth clenched. If it were not for them, then his meticulously crafted plan would have definitely succeeded in this hunt, wiping out the Holy Sun's knights in one fell swoop. But soon a chilling sensation crept up his spine. Now is not the time to worry about those two guys, because the temple's forces are watching them like hawks. Facing his former best friend, the saint still wanted to know the reason behind Matthias's betrayal, but Matthias only gave a cold reply. Is there really anything left for us to say? Indeed, the truth is laid bare right before us. There is nothing left to explain. With those words, both sides immediately dropped all pretenses. On one side is the saint and a troop of temple knights. On the other are the demon god's disciples, who have been lurking within the temple for years. The continent's two most powerful forces are about to clash. At this moment, our protagonist Zephyr is the one standing to gain the most. While those people are busy with their infighting outside, he can focus entirely on taking down the boss. I have to say, the protagonist has played this game of chess masterfully. However, the boss on Zephyr's side is acting a bit strange. Ned looks absolutely shocked. Is this truly the one from the legends? That bloodthirsty princess? Why is she so serene and beautiful? Watch closely. 1 second, the princess is gentle and calm. The next, she turns into a ferocious fiend. As her body shifts and warps, she gradually transforms into a terrifying monster. This is the true face of the final boss, the princess. Even for someone like Zephyr, facing a beast like this requires absolute focus. Based on Zephyr's knowledge from his past life, countless hunters met their end in this dungeon. In the end, only after the temple lost many of its elite forces did they manage to snatch a narrow victory. Even the god of private debts in the celestial realm is quietly waiting for Zephyr to fail. He is already prepared to seize his soul. Meanwhile, on the other side, the temple's civil war has just broken out. Matthias put his hand behind his back and signaled with his fingers. The plan was simple. On the count of 3, they would all drink the potion that resists the temple's branding. But just as his finger counted 1, the saint struck first. With a single command, the entire camp of the demon god's disciples was hit by the effects of the branding. They began to tear each other apart in a bloody frenzy. They were simply a step too late. A step too late, they were ultimately one step behind. Those who should have held the initiative ended up becoming the temple's prey. Very quickly, the curtain fell on this massacre. The once confident disciples of the demon god had all turned into cold corpses on the ground. In the end, only Matthias remained. This was only because the saint intentionally held back. His strength was still quite formidable. He had just taken out over 30 slaves in a mere 30 seconds. It only took him 30 seconds to deal with more than 30 slaves. He eliminated over 30 slaves in just 30 seconds. Taking down 30-plus enemies in only 30 seconds. He wiped out over 30 slaves in 30 seconds flat. In just 30 seconds, he had finished off those slaves. But the saint was even more powerful. In fact, during the entire fight, he had not even managed to touch a hair on the saint's head. Faced with such a massive gap in power, Matthias could only grit his teeth in pure rage. The difference between a saint and a non-saint was actually this vast. Is this what your god arranged? Suddenly, Matthias coughed up a spray of fresh blood. It was clear he had suffered severe internal injuries. But while he was coughing up blood, Matthias secretly spat out a strange little pill from his mouth. The saint, however, had not realized something was wrong yet. He was still busy asking Matthias why he had betrayed him. Matthias remained silent for a moment. Then he showed them the pill in his hand. If you want to know the truth, go ask your goddess yourself. Seeing the pill in Matthias's hand, the saint and his group were instantly struck with terror. That thing instantly made the saints turn pale with fright. This pill is the ultimate trump card that only high-ranking apostles of the demon god can possess. The Stone of Revelation. Once consumed, one will completely fall and become a demon. There is no turning back to being human, ever. But at this life or death crossroads, what is there left to hesitate about? As Matthias crushed the pill between his teeth, a surge of overwhelming mana erupted from within his body instantly. The ritual chains made of mana were shattered like glass. Furthermore, Matthias's body began to undergo a horrific transformation. Horns sprouted from his head. His skin tone gradually shifted. In no time, Matthias had fully entered his demonic form. The murderous intent surrounding him felt almost physical. This was a level of power he had never experienced before. At this moment, even the saint finally began to panic. This is exactly what happens when you do not finish the job. The temple priests hurriedly took action. They used mana to buff the temple soldiers, preparing to strike while Matthias's power was still unstable. They planned to overwhelm him with pure numbers. Soon, a dense barrage of magical attacks was unleashed directly at Matthias. However, they still vastly underestimated the strength of a demonized being. Matthias simply raised his arm slightly. In an instant, every single attack was nullified by his forearm. The saint saw an opening and seized the chance to attack. Raising the Spear of Radiance, he unleashed his ultimate skill, Light's Judgment. Yet even an attack of such magnitude was parried by Matthias. With just one hand, he caught the saint's spear in a death grip. The saint could not pull it back even with both hands. However, right at this critical moment, the nearby sister suddenly remembered something. Don't we still have the legendary gear, the Pillar of Faith? It is the most expensive equipment in the temple's arsenal. Originally meant to cheese the boss by blocking the gate, but using it now should be enough to wipe Matthias out instantly. However, as the sister reached for her waist pouch, she was completely dumbstruck. WTF? Who the hell stole my Pillar of Faith? That is right, this was the work of our protagonist, Ned. At this moment, Ned was holding the Pillar of Faith. He looked at Zephyr with pure admiration. I can't believe you thought of using this against the boss. You are really something else. Almost all the top-tier forces in the temple had gathered in this dungeon. The princess's grave. Meanwhile, Zephyr and his master from his previous life used their plan to trigger an internal conflict within the temple. While they teamed up to raid the final boss, the princess, Zephyr drew his weapon, the very one he bought from White Rose, with the magic sword Twilight. After a series of slashes, he sliced off several of the boss's tentacles. Ned quickly jumped into the fray as well. The two of them utilized the exact same sword style, moving as if they were each other's shadows, remaining calm and collected even before this powerful boss. Following the execution of the Dragon King's style, Cloud Dragon's Ascent, the boss's head was cleaved off. However, the battle was far from over. A new torso began to sprout from the boss's head. The boss monster was entering phase 2, but Zephyr just gave a light chuckle. This is the moment I have been waiting for. Zephyr quickly turned to signal Ned. Ned caught on immediately. In a flash, Ned charged straight at the boss while it was mid-evolution, closing the distance instantly. He promptly opened the box containing the Pillar of Faith. In an instant, a massive golden sword descended. The potent holy power continuously weakened the boss's evil energy. With a down payment of 100,000 gold coins, this weapon cost the temple a fortune. Gold coins. This weapon was bought with a massive investment from the temple. For 100,000 gold, it better work like a charm, right? Soon, with a final blow from Zephyr, the boss was finally annihilated. But before the two could even catch their breath, another anomaly occurred. A heavy, rhythmic thumping suddenly echoed from the main gates outside. It was the undead knights guarding the entrance. As the pounding on the gates intensified, a constant stream of terrifying mana began to seep through the cracks, converging rapidly into the boss's body. As that energy surged into her, the boss was instantly resurrected with full health. However, the boss's current appearance was unlike anything seen before. A terrifying, murderous intent swirled around her, like the eerie calm before a devastating storm. Even Zephyr lost his composure, because this event was never recorded in the books of his past life. It seems that by bypassing the guards to attack the boss directly, the future has been fundamentally altered. The boss turned her gaze toward the pillar of faith. With just a flick of her finger, the pillar of faith that had just pinned her down so effectively was slammed deep into the ground with a resounding crash. Seeing this turn of events, Zephyr and Ned immediately swung their blades at the boss, but their strikes felt as if they were hitting thin air. Zephyr's eyes narrowed in realization. He recognized it instantly, the ancient magic of media. Spatial distortion. The boss was now acting like a literal glitch in the system. In a flash, she lunged right in front of Ned. A powerful intuition screamed at him. One hit, and he would be a dead man. Fortunately, Zephyr used his spider webs just in time to restrain the boss. Thankfully, Zephyr's web managed to halt her momentum, but the boss only paused for a mere second. She raised her hand for a single strike, landing a devastating blow directly on Ned. Blood sprayed instantly like an arrow from a wound. With another slight movement of her fingers, surging mana began to ruthlessly torture Ned's body. Seeing the situation, Zephyr launched a desperate assault on the boss, trying to force her to stop her onslaught. He employed the ancient Eastern art of pressure points. By striking the meridians, he intended to seal the boss's mana flow. Furthermore, Zephyr took the opportunity to attach the Spider Queen's webs to the boss, pulling the boss close with all his might. He delivered a heavy, direct hit with his Thunder Palm. Then he retrieved a healing orb from his subspace and threw it toward Ned. This would temporarily keep Ned's life hanging by a thread. It worked. It would at least buy Ned some time, but even so, his life would only last a few more seconds. Just a few short seconds, the boss broke free from the pressure point seal, almost immediately. With one whip, she sent Zephyr crashing violently against the wall. Then, as the boss raised her hand, she condensed several massive spheres of gravitational energy. At that moment, a self-deprecating smile appeared on Zephyr's face. He never expected that before even challenging the gods. He would find his pathetic grave in this cold, dark dungeon. Soon, following a series of deafening explosions, the boss's lair finally fell silent. Ned's fate remained unknown. Zephyr had also lost his ability to fight. The boss stood proudly in the center of the room. Could it be that everything ends here? To think that changing the future would lead to this unexpected disaster. The boss, empowered by the guard's mana, had become an unstoppable, game-breaking existence. With that cheat-like level of power, the battle had been settled in the blink of an eye. Ned's life hung in the balance. Zephyr was severely wounded and incapacitated. Before a boss of this caliber, humanity felt utterly powerless. Zephyr lay there, broken and bleeding. Despite his critical injuries, his eyes still burned with pure rage. He remembered the humiliation of being trampled by the demon god. He remembered the gods, who for their own amusement, had placed one shackle after another upon him. The burdens he carried on his shoulders would not allow him to fall in a place like this. But before Zephyr could think further, the boss had already reached him and raised her finger. A terrifying surge of mana began to gather. It was a strike intended to deal Zephyr a fatal blow. However, at that moment, Zephyr's eyes sharpened. If death is inevitable either way, I might as well do something truly sacrilegious. With that thought, Zephyr used his own blood on the ground to scrawl a strange and ancient symbol. As Zephyr completed the final stroke, a sudden blinding light flashed. That silky long hair and those pure white wings. Isn't that the high angel who received the protagonist during his reincarnation last time? At this moment, the high angel's eyes burned with indignation. She spoke in a chilling voice. Human, how do you know such blasphemous script? As it turns out, these characters are proof of the gods' past crushing defeat. Because of this, the script was branded a taboo by the Pantheon. Anyone who dares to draw it shall face divine retribution. The one who draws it will surely be struck down by the heavens. They will perish under the weight of the great Tao for their insolence. But Zephyr did not bother answering the angel's question immediately. Right now, he only wanted to use the barrier created by her presence to recover as much stamina as possible. He even had the audacity to demand more power from the angel. Grant me the power first, then I will tell you how I know it. Furthermore, Zephyr's hands did not stop for a second. This kind of behavior was essentially trampling all over the angel's dignity. Finally, the angel lost her patience. Her 6 wings unfurled, and a terrifying pressure surged instantly. Zephyr's fingers were pinned, unable to move even a fraction. The angel stated, "The gods above are all clamoring for your execution right now. Can't you show some restraint?" But after his all-or-nothing gamble just now, Zephyr was now full of confidence. If those gods truly wanted him dead, he would have been long gone by now. The fact that he has been allowed to live this long, and even be resurrected to this point, proves that I still have utility value to them. It proves I am still a valuable pawn in their game. In other words, these so-called gods do not want this show to end so easily. At this point, even the angel began to feel flustered. Zephyr then shouted directly toward the heavens, "If you do not want me to die for nothing, then grant me a far more powerful ability. If I die right here, this little perk of yours dies too. If I am out of the picture, there will surely be those among you who stand to gain, and those who stand to lose big. You would not want to lose your bet, would you? If you want this game to continue, then give me the power, the god of death." As expected, just as he thought, Zephyr's bold words were clearly transmitted to all the gods in the heavens. His message was delivered loud and clear to the pantheon. The gods heard every single word. The gods all showed varying expressions of shock and intrigue. If my guess is correct, someone up there is about to get very restless. Sure enough, the goddess of light let out a cold smirk. A pillar of light descended instantly upon Zephyr. The restrictions on the Holy Sword of Light perk were lifted. It was clear that he had won this gamble. Afterwards, as the angel's barrier dissipated, amidst a series of dark crackles, Zephyr once again stood before the boss, the princess. "Now, let us settle this once and for all." Seeing Zephyr, the boss let out a grotesque screech. That terrifying mana was still present. However, the current Zephyr no longer felt a shred of fear. He faced the boss's attack head-on. Then, before the boss's shocked eyes, a sharp golden light sliced through its body. Indeed, this was the perk-enhanced Holy Sword of the Goddess of Light. Its form, a single horizontal sweep, cleaved the princess boss in half. Facing the spatial distortion that once left him helpless, Zephyr simply delivered a brutal, overpowering slash. If space itself is distorted, then I shall simply tear it asunder. If Zephyr's combat power was already at the peak, then now, wielding a divine artifact, he has ascended far beyond any known limits. Following that, Zephyr unleashes another devastating ultimate move. This grueling boss battle finally draws to a close. As the princess is defeated by Zephyr, the evil energy within her body is completely purged. The true princess of the ancient empire, Eurydice, finally awakens. The princess gazes at her surroundings, finding them both familiar and yet so foreign. A flood of memories rushes into her mind. She remembers her knight George successfully slaying the black dragon Kaisaros. He returned in triumph and offered the dragon heart to her. But the dragon heart had been cursed by the black dragon. Though the two eventually managed to purify the heart, they were trapped forever within this tomb, reduced to these monstrous, half-dead forms. The brilliant princess instantly realizes Zephyr has come for the dragon heart, but she wishes to bestow it only upon a person of justice. So, with Zephyr's permission, the princess reads his memories. The scenes she witnesses leave her utterly shaken. The destruction of the world, the final stand against the demon god, and how the gods reincarnated Zephyr just for their own amusement, all for the sake of their twisted entertainment. Just how much of a burden has this man been carrying? After finishing the memory reading, faced with the future Zephyr has endured, the princess cannot help but shed tears, and this dark future is destined to repeat itself very soon. That is why Zephyr needs the princess, the most powerful mage in history, to help him absorb the dragon heart. If he can harness the power of the dragon heart, then he will have one more trump card to challenge the demon god in the future. Understanding Zephyr's plight, the princess finally agrees to help. Furthermore, she reveals a world-shattering secret. Back then, to prevent her from revealing the truths of this world, the golden dragon placed a silence curse upon her, yet she can still provide cryptic hints. She warns that in the near future, the time will soon come when Zephyr must choose between his most precious person and someone else, a choice he cannot avoid. Zephyr's expression instantly shifts to one of utter disbelief. Does this mean even with a second chance, he still cannot protect the one who matters most? Before Zephyr can even process this, the princess begins to shift the dungeon's structure, retrieving a mysterious object from its depths. Indeed, this is the dragon heart, the very prize that the strongest across the continent have coveted for ages. Now, it sits right before Zephyr's eyes. As the princess begins her incantation, momentarily, Zephyr's consciousness sinks into a vast abyss of darkness. Zephyr wonders in confusion where on earth he is. At that very moment, a giant eye snaps open behind him. As a massive claw seizes him, the terrifying creature finally reveals its full form. The mere presence of such a being inspires primal dread. This creature, its existence alone is enough to make anyone tremble. It is none other than the master of the heart, the black dragon Kaisaros. Soon, the black dragon's oppressive voice booms out. "Human, you dare covet my power." The dragon leans in and sniffs him. "You reek of those wretched gods. Are you another puppet sent by those fools?" Within the mental space, Zephyr is held tight by the black dragon's malice. However, despite the black dragon's overwhelming arrogance just a second ago, in the very next instant, Zephyr uses sheer raw strength to force the giant claw open. Zephyr's gaze turned cold as he remained dead silent. It looked like he was just posing to look cool. but that surging mana seemed to tell a different story. Even if it were true, even with the black dragon standing before him, it would not stand a chance. And by the time the black dragon looked down at its claws, Zephyr had already vanished into thin air. Before the black dragon could even react, Zephyr was already right in its face. Terrifying mana hummed and vibrated around Zephyr's iron fist. The next moment his fist landed squarely and heavily right on the black dragon's face, sending the black dragon howling in agony. Then, Zephyr slowly drew a longsword from the void, and addressed the black dragon. "Did you really think this was my first time facing a dragon's malice? In fact, if you count his previous life, this was already the 5th time Zephyr had absorbed a dragon heart. The other little buddies of this black dragon had actually all been dealt with by Zephyr in his past life. Today, he had to give a proper lesson to this disobedient black dragon." Meanwhile, outside, Ned finally regained consciousness. He looked at the princess, who was currently helping Zephyr absorb the dragon heart. He was a bit dazed and confused. "Is this really the same boss that just beat me half to death?" As the princess flicked her finger, Ned let out a gag, and actually vomited up the brand worm from within his body. Looking at the princess's gentle profile as she smiled, Ned slowly closed his eyes, his heart fluttering a little. Although he did not know what was going on, it was clear she bore them no ill will. On the other side of the scene, the infighting at the temple was gradually reaching its end. The demonized Matthias had inflicted heavy casualties on the temple knights. The last priest and the temple nun were lifted up by him, one in each hand. With a sudden surge of strength, he finished them both instantly. The once grand and mighty temple army was now reduced to only the saint himself. That overwhelming and terrifying power left the saint completely unable to defend himself. Soon, Matthias raised his hand to gather a massive ultimate move, preparing to finish off this final saint. But he did not expect the situation to flip at that very moment. As a single golden feather drifted by, the giant fireball Matthias had gathered was extinguished instantly. A sacred angelic silhouette appeared right behind the saint. It turned out this was the ancient trump card, kept by every saint throughout history, to borrow power from their future selves, when they would eventually become angels. But the price was to trade away their very lifespan. This was also why the saints of every generation never lived long. This was the reason they could not survive past their prime. When facing a formidable foe, they had to pay the ultimate price. This was exactly why every saint in history never lived past the age of 30, and for this particular burst of power, the current saint had sacrificed a full 6 months of his life. The saint raised his hand, releasing a horrific wave of mana, battering the demonized Matthias until he was riddled with holes. Finally, with the sacrifice of all temple members, and half a year of the saint's life, the internal strife ended. However, with only the strength of the 3 of them left, it was no longer enough to conquer this dungeon. So, the saint decided to give up. They had no choice but to head back home for now. But then, something unfortunate happened. They actually ran into the undead guardian on their way out. This guardian happened to be on the same level as the princess inside. Even Zephyr was pushed to a deathmatch when fighting the princess. So it goes without saying for this saint, he was straight up being wiped across the floor. However, at this moment of crisis, a tall figure slowly pushed open the great gates. It was none other than Zephyr, having already absorbed the dragon heart. Zephyr cleared his throat. Words filled with absolute authority escaped Zephyr's lips. "You skeleton. Get down on your knees." Manifestation of the word. In the next second, an invisible giant hand took the undead guard and slammed it violently into the ground. That is right, this is the exclusive dragon skill, Dragon's Tongue. A skill usable in this state. Indeed, the dragon's unique Dragon's Tongue. Make no mistake, this is the dragon's exclusive skill, Dragon's Tongue. It allows one to bind an opponent through mere words. Used as a command, it can restrain the enemy with speech. One can bind the opponent using only words. Standing nearby, the holy son Lucius looked utterly horrified. Holy crap. Is this guy using a cheat code? But wait, it is not over yet. As the effect of Dragon's Tongue wore off, the undead guard lunged upward in a violent rage. It seemed deeply insulted by the humiliation Zephyr just inflicted. The demon sword in its hand, fueled by fury, slashed down fiercely at Zephyr. Zephyr immediately summoned the Sword of Light. At this moment, the Sword of Light's restrictions were completely lifted. With the limiters gone, the Sword of Light's true power was unleashed. The Sword of Light had its restrictions entirely removed, because what Zephyr was currently doing was the mission entrusted to him by the Goddess of Light, and that mission was to rescue the Holy Sun. As Zephyr raised the Sword of Light high, the surging divine power foreshadowed the end. This was a guaranteed one-hit kill. You should rest in peace now. You have worked hard, Dragon Slayer. As Zephyr's words fell, the terrifying divine power erupted in an instant. Finally, the knight and the princess could depart together. The Holy Son, watching from the side, grew more bewildered by the second. Not only could this guy manifest his words into reality, he could even wield the goddess of light's own sword. What the hell? Am I the Holy Son or is he? And that was not all. The aura this man radiated reminded him of the first time he saw a gold dragon as a child. It was an overwhelming pressure that left one unable to resist. Thinking this, the Holy Son immediately took the lead, kneeling on one knee to greet the noble guest. The second step of the plan was finally about to begin. That was to join forces with the Holy Son, to eradicate all the demon god's apostles within the temple. The internal power structure of the temple was about to be reshuffled. But before that, he first had to earn the Holy Son's trust. Zephyr first led the Holy Son and the others to the treasure room. This was the place where Princess Eurydica's burial offerings were kept. It was also the precious legacy the princess left for the hero, as Zephyr pushed with both hands. With a heavy push from Zephyr's hands, the overwhelming scent of pure wealth hit them in the face. The items sealed within those countless crystals, every single one of them was a treasure that would make the continent's top powerhouses flock like birds for a feast. Even the Holy Son, who had seen grand sights since childhood, was dumbfounded by the scene before his eyes. Is this the true wealth of an ancient empire's princess? Soon, everyone found the equipment they needed. One by one, they stared at the treasures in their hands, unable to look away. Obsidian bracers, their eyes were glued to the treasures they held. Mirror, they were completely mesmerized by the artifacts in their grasp. The 4 pieces of equipment Ned selected were the Raven's Cloak, the dark skin-tight suit, the Mist Bracers, yes, the Mist Bracers, and a Sword of Illusion. Zephyr also chose a domineering greatsword named Graham. Dressed in all black gear, he looked incredibly cool. After picking their gear, the group sat down to discuss their strategy. Zephyr named the enemy they were about to face, Cardinal Aldine. However, the Holy Son expressed doubt regarding Zephyr's words, because Aldine had been in the temple for a long time. Aldine, because this man was a powerhouse within the temple, widely respected for his divine authority, because this Aldine, whether in bloodline or status, he was an immovable existence. Not only had he inherited his father's legacy, but he had also become the temple's second in command, holding multiple positions within the temple. I must ask you to remain neutral at all times. Please act like a brother to me, and maintain your neutrality. Treat me as kin, while staying impartial through it all. Just treat me well. If it is said that he is the enemy, if he truly is the enemy, no matter how it is framed, the Holy Son simply cannot believe it. Since Zephyr seeks to collaborate with the Holy Son, how could he not come fully prepared? Naturally, he possesses evidence that would convince the Holy Son. Meanwhile, Aldine had already set his plans into motion. He successfully exploited the trust built over years within the temple, taking control of the temple's Grand Master, and even kidnapping the Holy Son's wife and child. The power Aldine used to manipulate the Grand Master was none other than the brand parasites within his body, spawning eggs. As long as the larvae are fed to humans, he can control them at his beck and call, and his next move was to take those. Feed the larva to the Holy Son's wife and child. Feed them to his wife and child. Be good children, as the larvae are fed to his family. Good children. And just at that moment, right at that moment, a soldier suddenly rushed in with news. The Holy Son, Lucius, has actually broken in. Holy Son Lucius barged in. What? Lucius has forced his way inside. Upon hearing this, Aldine violently swung the window open to look. Sure enough, the Holy Son was leading the priests and the nuns had already fought their way to the cathedral gates. That is right. This is precisely the effect of the insight potion Zephyr provided. With just a drop in the eyes, the insight potion shows its power. A single drop was enough, thanks to Zephyr's insight potion. Now, the Holy Son can see with absolute clarity the brand parasites inside the demon god's disciples. Haha, I never expected my judgment of character to be so poor. To think I was this blind. I never expected to be so deceived by people. So the 4th parish within the temple had long ago become a stronghold for the demon god's disciples. The Holy Son's gaze turned sharp and cold as he spoke with overwhelming authority. I, the Holy Son of Light, Lucius Giordani, under suspicion of heresy, I am placing you under arrest. Cardinal Aldine, disciple of the demon god, in a clash against the goddess of light's chosen Holy Son, who will emerge victorious. At this moment, the Holy Son finally knew the full truth. With a darkened expression, he slowly threw down a stack of letters. This was the evidence Zephyr helped him find. Correspondence between Cardinal Aldine and the demon god's followers. It clearly documented their entire conspiracy. The plan to seize the dragon heart and assassinate the Holy Son. Faced with such undeniable evidence from the Holy Son, Aldine stopped pretending and showed his hand. He is indeed a a core leader of the demon god's cult, ranked 11th among the demon god's apostles. But a second later, Aldine's eyes filled with contempt. So what if you know the truth now? You cannot lay a single finger on me. Correct. Aldine currently held a hostage, none other than the Holy Sun's beloved wife. Seeing this, the Holy Sun began to panic. Not only that, Aldine pulled out a special brand parasite. If a human consumes it, they are brainwashed. Becoming his most loyal servant, Aldine offered the Holy Sun a choice between 3 targets. Shall I feed it to your lover, or perhaps your child? Or will you, the noble Holy Sun, swallow it yourself? He gave the Holy Sun only 3 seconds to decide. Driven to panic, the Holy Sun immediately let out a hysterical roar. Terrified and desperate, he screamed in pure rage, "I will be the one to eat it." But Aldine let out a sinister, triumphant smirk. In the next second, he shoved it straight into the mouth of the saint's lover. He lived for the moment he could see that look of pure despair on the saint's face. Unfortunately for him, the saint was not fighting this battle alone. Right at that moment, utilizing the mist shackles, Ned, who had been cloaked in invisibility, suddenly lunged forward. That is right, he had been waiting for Aldine to drop his guard for just a single heartbeat. With a clean strike, he sliced right through half of Aldine's body. He immediately grabbed the saint's wife, preparing to retreat. Seeing this unfold, the Golden Knight, Aldine's personal guard, stepped up to intercept them. Ned traded a heavy blow with him. He realized his opponent's strength was surprisingly a dead match for his own. Ned's gaze sharpened. "Brother, the twin knights." Ned's eyes narrowed as he realized the truth. Even as one of the twins, his power is truly formidable. As expected of one of the continent's top 10 strongest warriors. Suddenly, a flash of golden light streaked across the room. The saint's reinforcements had arrived, and the saint's target was none other than Cardinal Aldine by the window. The Golden Knight could not afford to keep dueling Ned. He rushed to Aldine's side and pushed him out of the way. He would take the full force of the strike himself. Ned finally had the opening to take the saint's wife and child away from the battlefield. Now, what remains is the showdown between the saint and the Golden Knight. With his burdens lifted, Lucius the Saint openly mocked him. "What is the matter? Is there only one twin knight here? I heard it takes both of you together to even equal one whole person." The Golden Knight fired back with a retort. "To deal with the likes of you, I am more than enough." Soon, both men began gathering their momentum for the clash. One is the Golden Knight, one of the top 10 on the continent. The other is the Saint of Light, the chosen one of the gods. Meanwhile, the nun White Rose also noticed the commotion coming from the temple. She recalled Zephyr's earlier warning to her. He told her not to go anywhere near the temple during this time. It seemed he had predicted this entire event would happen. The mining crew Zephyr once belonged to, that former lowly miner, has now reached heights they can only dream of. From this point forward, the temple chapter is drawing to a close. But will Zephyr and his allies emerge victorious against one of the continent's top 10? Which of them is truly the strongest? The Golden Knight made the first move. With terrifying speed, he was in front of the saint in an instant. Conventionally speaking, in a clash between a spear and a sword, the spear should hold the advantage. Because of the difference in reach, a spearman can counter-attack before the opponent even gets close. But in this exchange, the saint clearly failed to react in time. He took a heavy, direct slash from the Golden Knight's blade. Yet, in the following second, something bizarre happened. The Golden Knight was actually hit by his own attack. It was reflected right back at him with full force. So this was the effect of the chainmail, the treasure the saint had selected from the vault. It can reflect 50% of all damage received back at the attacker. Fortunately, the Golden Knight pulled his strike just in time, or the self-inflicted damage would have been far worse. But that was just the saint toying with him a little. In the next heartbeat, the saint's gaze turned cold. He unleashed his finishing move. Dozens of spear thrusts were executed in a single second. The Golden Knight narrowly dodged the onslaught, but it was not over yet. Before the Golden Knight could even breathe, the saint instantly closed the distance. His fist, saturated with powerful battle aura, slammed squarely into the Golden Knight's body. The Golden Knight was sent flying dozens of meters away. Unbelievably, the saint closed in again with extreme speed. Do you know why you twin knights are ranked so low among the top 10? Because the power of a saint is truly divine. How could they ever be compared to mere mortals like you? If it were not for that one small detail, none of you would even be qualified to rank among the top 10 strongest. As soon as the saint finished speaking, he unleashed a devastating ultimate move. He slammed down a massive ultimate skill, a ruthless strike, hitting with absolute ferocity. The terrifying impact sent debris and shattered stones flying everywhere. The power of this single blow was truly horrific. The Gold Knight was crushed, coughing up fresh blood. Half of his body was nearly obliterated instantly. However, the battle was far from over. Thanks to the effects of the demon god's apostle branding worm, the Gold Knight's wounds healed in an instant. A second later, he lunged behind the saint, bringing his blade down with a vicious slash. But right at that moment, a telepathic summons from Bishop Aldine echoed in the Gold Knight's mind. "Stop right now. Halt. Come to my location immediately. Drop everything and get here this instant." "Wait. It was obvious. Aldine's side had encountered a dire crisis, while the Gold Knight was momentarily dazed. A series of magic chains tightly bound him. Skill paralysis, magical chains wrapped around the Gold Knight's body. The magic chains constricted, locking the Gold Knight in place. Seizing the opening, the Saint thrust his spear forward, dealing another 10,000 points of critical damage to the Gold Knight. The reason Aldine had sent out the distress signal was because he was being totally clapped by a literal cheat code player. He was on the verge of being beaten to death by Zephyr. Zephyr wore a mocking smirk on his face. "Get back up. I am not done beating you yet." In Zephyr's previous life, neither Ned nor the Saint met a good end. Ned had been too trusting of his master. He was backstabbed by the Silver Knight sent by his own teacher. He spent months on the run with a dragon heart he could not even absorb. He lost everything, and in the end, the dragon heart was stolen by his senior disciple. The dragon heart eventually fell into the hands of his elder brother. The Saint's fate was even more tragic. Forced by Aldine to swallow the larva of the branding worm, Lucius became nothing more than a puppet controlled by insects. He became a nightmare tier enemy for the world, and ultimately, his story ended in a gruesome tragedy. The one responsible for all these tragedies was none other than Bishop Aldine. Zephyr raised his longsword high. "The debts of tragedy from my past life will be paid in full by you in this life." Meanwhile, on the Saint's side, the priests and sisters had finished their tasks and joined the fray. It was now a 3-on-1 showdown. The Gold Knight was livid, his fury reaching a breaking point. The demon god's apostle camp was being completely decimated. Zephyr had disguised himself as a carriage driver to play the ultimate prank. Just as Bishop Aldine was about to step into the carriage, he realized his hand was covered in deadly poison. An agonizing pain surged through him instantly. The pain was so intense that Bishop Aldine rolled on the ground, screaming. Zephyr dropped his disguise. He ripped off the driver's robe with a flourish. Aldine struggled to lift his head. Who are you?" Single quote. The only answer he received was a heavy boot from Zephyr to his face. The scene completely terrified the knights guarding Bishop Aldine. They hurriedly drew their swords. "I am the Silver Knight, one of the top 10 strongest on the continent. Are you not afraid of me?" But before the knight could even finish his sentence, Zephyr silenced him forever with a single poison needle. So pathetic, not even worth a single hit. Was this Silver Knight just a total fraud? Bishop Aldine was clearly trying to stall for time, waiting for the real Silver Knight to arrive, hoping against hope for his champion to show up. But in the next moment, Zephyr delivered a dose of absolute despair. Indeed, what Zephyr held in his hand was the Silver Knight's helmet, because the real Silver Knight had already been taken out by Zephyr and his crew in secret. Zephyr hoisted his greatsword. He was about to execute the sin-riddled man. With a thunderous roar, a terrifying explosion of magical power erupted. Under such terrifying, destructive power, even leaving behind ashes would be a luxury. But in the next second, Zephyr was shocked. What he had struck was merely a puddle of liquid. Immediately, an attack came from behind. Zephyr quickly raised his sword to parry, and when Zephyr looked at Aldine again, he found that he had already transformed into a hideous monster. This was Aldine's demonic form. It turns out that long ago, Aldine had used the Stone of Revelation, transforming himself into a demon. Over the years, he learned how to shapeshift back into human form. Furthermore, the guards he kept by his side were not actually there to protect him. You are wrong. They were not for his protection. In fact, they were not meant to be his bodyguards at all. Rather, he just did not want anyone to see this side of him. As he spoke, Aldine's giant hand came crashing down. The shocking force of the blow tore through half the forest. Meanwhile, Ned also noticed the situation on Zephyr's end. After Ned safely settled the Holy Sun's wife and child, he set out. The day he had been longing for had finally arrived. The day he could personally slay his enemy. Everything was going exactly as planned. They had that item. Just as planned, the Golden Knight fled from the Holy Sun's grasp amidst the chaos. The Golden Knight took advantage of the confusion to escape. I must hurry. The Golden Knight escaped from the Holy Sun. The Golden Knight escaped under the Holy Sun's watch. At this moment, he had to act fast. He needed to find Bishop Aldine to recover from his injuries. But in the blink of an eye, the airborne Golden Knight was intercepted by a sword strike. That is right, this was Ned's mission. To intercept the Golden Knight, going to support Bishop Aldine. This was also the chance Zephyr gave Ned to get his revenge personally. Although it was Aldine who gave the order back then, the one who delivered the fatal stab to Ned's father was the very Golden Knight standing before him right now. Ned's eyes were now burning with rage. Do you still remember the time you executed my father? The Golden Knight, however, continued to provoke him. That name does not ring a bell. Probably because I have killed way too many people to count. Ignoring the fury in Ned's eyes, the Golden Knight took off his already shattered armor. The Golden Knight figured Ned chose a sneak attack earlier because he lacked the confidence to face him in a fair duel, thinking he could not win on his own. the Golden Knight became exceptionally arrogant. He claimed he had no interest in fighting, and even gave Ned 10 seconds to run away. But how could Ned possibly waste this golden opportunity for revenge? Ned threw aside the white cloth covering the item in his hand. In an instant, the Golden Knight's eyes widened in shock. Indeed, it was the moon sword, the personal blade of his younger brother, the Silver Knight. Ned let out a cold sneer. Want to know what your brother's last words were? Beat me, and I might just tell you. As the story unfolds further, we will discover that there are many hidden powerhouses. For instance, early on, when White Rose saw Zephyr use potent poison to strengthen his body, she suspected Zephyr was a member of the Assassin's Guild. This guild is known as Persephone. From White Rose's excited and animated reaction, it is not hard to see that this guild is an incredibly powerful and mysterious force. Of course, the Poison King Fade mentioned by Zephyr also hails from that guild, but the strength of the other members remains unknown. Secondly, there is the Easterner, Zi Chenling, ranked 9th among the demon god's followers. He is also Ned's master. Phew. However, it is worth noting that, in Zephyr's memories, in his previous life Ned was with Zi Chenling. Those martial arts he mastered, and those passed down to Zephyr, are techniques Zephyr continues to use to this very day. One can only imagine how terrifying Chen Liang's true power was. The third is the cult leader of these demon god followers, but this leader's identity is shrouded in mystery. He is effectively the demon god's direct subordinate on Earth. As everyone knows, the demon god's cult is crawling with sinister and cunning snakes. Furthermore, they are traitors to all of humanity, so their internal ranks must be a hornet's nest of backstabbing and power struggles. To hold your ground in an organization like that for so many years, you would need nothing less than cold hard strength. That covers all the hidden heavy hitters revealed in the story so far. But regardless of whether they are good or evil, they all share one thing in common. That is right, they are all human. Since Zephyr is the strongest human, naturally, that title includes dominance over these people as well. If Zephyr is hailed as the peak of humanity, then all of them must surely be beneath him in power. When Zephyr absorbed the dragon heart to fight the black dragon, he faced the dragon's malice and said, "You think, this is my first time resisting a dragon's malice. Counting my previous life, this makes it the 5th time." It is clear that in his past life, Zephyr had already ripped the hearts out of several other dragons. I am sure you all know what happens next in the plot. Zephyr was defeated by the demon god, then summoned to the pantheon by the divine messenger. According to the angel, it was for the god's amusement, and to spite that overbearing demon god, that Zephyr was granted reincarnation. However, certain details suggest the real truth goes much deeper than that. The angel and the gods are likely hiding something big. First off, why is the god of private debt so obsessed with Zephyr's soul? Normally, he just stays in the divine realm, sending messengers to collect souls. He should be able to just wait leisurely up there. But when it comes to Zephyr, he watches personally from the divine realm, as if he is terrified Zephyr might slip away. Also, in the princess's grave dungeon, when Zephyr threatened them with his own death, the gods actually fell silent. Even the goddess of light uncharacteristically lifted the restriction on the Sword of Light. At this point, you guys have probably realized it too. This so-called amusement is nothing more than a convenient excuse for the gods. Based on the title of this series, we can make a bold guess. The battle god in reincarnation of the battle god. Could it be Zephyr's form from a life even before his last one? Alright, that is enough of my wild theories for now. After the temple arc concludes, what powerful enemies will Zephyr face next? Let us wait and see. During the recent demon invasion, the demon race used their overwhelming power to ruthlessly slaughter humanity. Finally, the world met its end. He, the last survivor, was already exhausted, with his life flickering out like a candle in the wind. Standing right before him was the leader of the demon race, the demon god Tartarus, facing Zephyr, who was at death's door. The demon god's eyes were full of mockery, simply for his own entertainment. He even slowed the fading of Zephyr's life, intending to have a little chat with this ant. Human, your name is Zephyr, is not it? You are the first human I have seen with such stubbornness. Your conviction actually surprises me. After all, you are the strongest of your kind. So, I shall give you an opportunity. Join my ranks. This world is far too small. Let us join forces and conquer all worlds together. The demon god's words were filled with sincerity, but Zephyr knew the truth in his heart. His body was already broken beyond repair, beyond any hope of recovery. Yet he offers me a way out. This is nothing more than a winner's game. He just wants to see me beg for mercy. Zephyr remained silent for a moment, as if his resolve were wavering under the demon god's influence. Is it true? Can I really join your ranks? I petition. As he spoke, he reached out toward the demon god's hand. But at this very moment, Zephyr was thinking of something else entirely. My friends, in the next heartbeat, How could I, in my final moments, ever surrender now? He still remembered the ridiculous curse he swore before his lover, and that was, if I ever betray my convictions, then, let the power of the dimensions tear my body limb from limb. Listen well, demon god Tartarus. This is my answer, this is my final answer. Shut your mouth, you idiot. In an instant, the terrifying power of the dimensions erupted with a violent roar. Crash. Level 4. East. Support crash. Boom. AMN. As the energy dissipated, the demon god's eyes widened in shock. My hand. What is happening? How could my hand end up like this? He had been wounded in the battle. An angry roar swept across the entire battlefield. However, when he looked furiously at the protagonist, Zephyr, all he saw was a pile of charred humanoid remains. The demon god gnashed his teeth in pure rage. Zephyr, you bastard. A mere lowly mortal, daring to humiliate me like this. But anger was useless. The deed was done. A mere lowly mortal. He could only vent his fury upon the lifeless, charred remains. Who knows how much time passed? Suddenly, Zephyr woke up. His fingers twitched slightly. He realized he was actually still alive. His wounds had completely healed, and even his armor was perfectly intact. As he surveyed his surroundings, he found himself inside a divine temple. Zephyr froze for a second. Then it finally clicked. Is this the world after death? Just then, a voice suddenly echoed out. This is not the underworld. This is the abode of the gods, the lowest level of the pantheon. Then, the light in the center of the temple flickered. A woman with white wings emerged from the radiance. She was the high angel responsible for conveying the god's will. Mercedes.